Now, I won't put you through the hilarious trauma of the new national anthem, of course, that we must sing in love of the ABC that I showed you last night. Windows are still being repaired by O'Brien's Glass all over the country right now. So, in fairness to those tradies, let's just get to a conversation about Channel 2. Now, Channel 2 has, of course, passes every single of its own self-appointed tests that it is an unbiased organisation. Well, very rarely do we actually get to compare how they cover the same story twice. Well, that's exactly what has happened in Four Corners in the past 2 weeks. Now, last week I showed you a whole collection of things that came out of a sit-down with undecided voters about the Prime Minister. It was pretty positive for him, despite the fact of the gloomy music and the obviously masked up Prime Minister, who would wear an Australian flag on their face. And you'd remember this was the tone of the oh-so-independent reporter when it came to describing the Morrison time as Prime Minister.
Scott Morrison's Prime Ministership has been a rollercoaster ride, tested by natural disaster, economic upheaval and political scandal. Throughout his Prime Ministership, Scott Morrison has been hit by a series of damaging scandals, which have raised questions about his willingness to be held to account. Again, Morrison's response to the thousands of protesters outside Parliament only made things worse. Of all the criticisms of Scott Morrison, it's the charge that he is a liar that he has found one of the hardest to shake. It's a line ruthlessly prosecuted by Labor to attack his character. Do you think Scott Morrison lies? Do you think Scott Morrison lies?
Just in case you didn't get the message. Well, it was a chance to see how they would treat the contender to be Prime Minister. Was he pictured with a mask? No, he wasn't. He was, of course, looking off into a bright, new, lefty, green-filled future. And here again is that oh-so-independent reporter with the messages that he was sending over the airwaves to the electorate. This guy's amazing.
Anthony Albanese has worked hard to project a public image as a regular bloke, the kind you'd have a beer with. A die-hard South Sydney Rabbitohs fan who DJs in pubs and is fanatical about music.
Oh, he has a beer named after him as well?
Oh, has he? Oh, you know that? All right, that's pretty cool. Yeah, look, I like that.
Okay. But the omissions, and this is where the true bias comes out, the omissions in this report were extraordinary. In the episode about Morrison, there was lots of talk of the skullduggery about how he became Prime Minister. But they completely brushed over a key part of Anthony Albanese's CV. This is how they tried to present him when the fight was between Rudd trying to get his job back from Gillard, and he was, of course, stabbing her all day, every day.
Anthony Albanese has been a power broker inside the Labor Party for decades. He was a reluctant participant in the vicious Rudd-Gillard leadership battles. Albanese was clearly shattered by the spectacle of the Labor Party at war with itself.
But guess what? He completely didn't mention that Anthony Albanese was promoted because of the difficulties of Rudd and Gillard, and Rudd made him his deputy Prime Minister. This is completely left out of the story last night. It did not exist. You didn't see that image of him being sworn in as Prime Minister. You did not see that image of him as Rudd's deputy Prime Minister, of course, in 2013, that was flushed by the Australian people. This matters, if only because it is fact. But last night, they couldn't bring themselves to tell you that that was part of his story. Instead, the only reference to it was that he was crocodile tearing and going on about fighting Tories. It continues when essentially this thing started to turn into a sales pitch.
Anthony Albanese has released some major policies. Notably, a pledge to remove the cap on the annual childcare subsidy to encourage parents back into the workforce. Labor's 43% emissions target is a compromise, seeking the middle ground between supporters of stronger action and workers who fear for their livelihoods. If he was in front of you right now, what would you say to Anthony Albanese about what he needs to do to win your vote?
Seriously? The questions to the voters was, Scott Morrison's a liar, he's a liar, he's a liar. The questions about Albo, did you know there's a beer named after him? What would you say to get Each Way Albo to get your support? Now, remember last week I also showed you that of the 3 Canberra experts that they had, one was a self-admitted liar, one was from The Guardian, and one was the Chief of Staff to John Howard decades ago. But to prop up Albo, did they use the same 3? No. They had 5 people to tell us about Anthony Albanese, one of which being Troy Bramston, who at least told the story about how hard a lefty he was. But you had the self-admitted liar, Craig Emerson, of course, who wrote the review about the Labor Party after 2019, the bloke who ran Rudd's campaign where he was Deputy Prime Minister in 2013, and the Sheila from the Saturday paper. That's so left that even lefties forget to actually buy it. But thankfully, the same story that couldn't be sifted despite the spin, despite the fiddle, was what the undecided voters thought. The same group of undecided voters had their say on a whole collection of things, including, what's the first thing that you think of when I say Anthony Albanese?
What's the first thing you think of when I say the name Anthony Albanese?
Unknown, untested and untried.
I'd say neutral.
He's nasally. He talks through his nose. That's the first thing I hear when he opens his mouth.
Oh, surely they've got better things to say.
What would you say Anthony Albanese stands for?
Getting elected.
Is he leadership material? Haven't seen that yet.
But what about his values?
What values do you think Anthony Albanese has?
I'm struggling with that one straight away. I'm really struggling. Perhaps family values is something that stands out for me. Without knowing in depth, that's how he strikes me as a person, family values.
To those who have mentored me over the years.
I have no idea. That's a good thing to come out with. I'm a values politician, but you've got to have something to back it up. And I don't know that he's even actually displayed what those values that he talks about are.
And then, of course, there is all of the bad ideas that Australians rejected dramatically in 2019.
His decisions have left some voters asking why.
Thank you.
What's happened? Why? So in the lead up to the last election, you're talking about these sort of things, negative gearing and all these sort of things, which put the fear of God into a lot of people, particularly investors. But what's changed? They've changed their policy, but they haven't told us why. And if there is, it's got to be more than, well, that didn't work last time, so we're going to try this. What is it, Mr. Albanese, that you really believe in? What is it that you want to do as a leader to take us forward? And why is it okay for a couple of years ago that you have these policies, but now you're not running with them? What's changed?
Look, it's kind of like sliding under the radar, really, isn't it? I think that if he wants to make any roads, he has to stand up and say, this is what I'm doing.
I don't understand what their agenda is, what they are going to do after if they win.
It wasn't the summer many had hoped for, especially the government.
So what are their policies? What is their forward path? How they want to do? How they want to pull up the country going forward?
Good morning.
So if they don't come out in black and white towards normal people, it's very difficult to comprehend that.
So ask yourself, does this look like the bloke who's leading by 10 points, who's absolutely, positively going to be the next Prime Minister? Well, obviously not. Now, without doubt, the 3 pillars that I think help decide this election is the economy, China, and the relationship with the Greens. So let's talk about the economy.
So you basically don't trust them?
No, I don't. I don't trust them at all.
Okay, so let's bring it home. Can the reporter who says Scott Morrison is a liar, he's a liar, he's a liar, Albo's a bloke who you could have a beer with, he's the daggy DJ dad. Okay, so this will bring it home. Is he PM material?
Do you think he's Prime Minister material?
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but I've got a huge reservation about it, so I'm very much on the fence on that one.
He's almost he's almost prime ministerial material.
Thanks very much. Whereabouts are you guys from?
I don't necessarily yet see him. I can't see him as the Prime Minister because I'm not sure that he specifically has I wouldn't say the skills, because he has to have the skills, otherwise they wouldn't have put him there in the first place. But it feels like as a leader, he might still be a little bit, what do I do next?
And that bloke voted Labor at the last election. And the bloke who goes, voted Greens and Independent recently. You know and I know that this election is not inevitable, just like any election is not inevitable. The media may scream and carry on that the patron saint of this and the ABC of that and the fake independence and all those things that they say will determine. But even when Channel 2 desperately tried to shine it, they couldn't quite put enough glitter on the candidacy of Anthony Albanese. This was really insightful stuff that we heard, because these are the people that will end up deciding. Now, many of them, yes, have a Labor voting record, but still, you would think by now they'd be in rah-rah mode.